Hi, and thank you for joining us today on GoedtechGo, where we're going to do a pig kidney dissection. The first thing we want to do is we want to use our anatomage table to show you some of the structures and where you can find the kidneys and do an orientation of those kidneys on the human body. So this is our anatomage table, and I'm going to just pan out so I can show you where the kidneys actually lie. And as soon as we start to get some of those large and small intestines away, you'll see that here are my kidneys here. They are, if I can rotate here, they are on the posterior portion of the body, so in the back, and you can see that these are the kidneys here. Now I'm gonna isolate those kidneys so that I can kind of show you the urinary system on our subject. And here's the urinary system. Increase the size for you. And what you'll notice in this urinary system is there's two kidneys, a left and a right. And in the middle here is where you have three different tubes going in. One is a renal artery, one is a renal vein, and one is the ureter. The renal artery, the blood is taken in here, and then the waste is brought out through this ureter here, and it is stored in the bladder. And then eventually, as it is removed and secreted from the body or excreted from the body, it goes through this urethra. So let's take and cut one of these kidneys just so we can see the inside of it. And this will allow us to rotate and see some of the internal structures that we're going to see in the dissection. You can see this is where the blood comes in and leaves, along with the waste. Here is the capsule on the outside. You have a renal cortex in here. There are some renal pyramids, and this is where all of that filtration takes place. It cleans out the blood, gets rid of substances it doesn't need, and then takes the clean blood and sends it back into the body system. So let's leave this anatomage table and let's look at an actual pig kidney. Okay, here we have two different types of kidneys. This is a fresh kidney, and this is actually a beef kidney that I bought at one of the stores. I bought this at Vallarta. You can see that this pig kidney is a lot smoother, right? And this one was in formalin. This is a preserved specimen, so it's a little more dense. You can see here is where you have, this is the medial portion of it. And so this is where the blood comes in, the blood goes out, and then the waste is actually brought out. Here is your cow kidney, and I'm gonna move this over. You can see it's very red, and that's because it's very vascular, which means that, what does it do? It filters blood. So that means there's a lot of blood in here, and that's where it gets its color. That vascular tissue is gonna be red. I'm gonna turn this over here so you can kind of see the difference between this pig kidney, where all of the tubes, the three tubes, come in, to where they come in the middle here. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a cut. And this is pretty soft tissue. Again, this is fresh, so it's a lot softer. We'll talk about some of these structures. They're a little bit easier to see in the pig than in the cow. But you can see in here some of these structures, some of the tubes, the ducts. Here are here's the ureter here, a little bit of fat, but that's the difference. You can totally see how vascular it is, and that's what I want to show on this fresh kidney, is how vascular it was, or it is, and how much blood is actually contained in there, and then some of the inside components. Let's set this aside here, and let's take a look at the pig kidney. Okay, pig kidney is, like I said, it's a little more dense. It's been sitting in a bag of formalin for a while. You can see here it has three tubes attached. They're a little bit difficult to see in these because they are preserved, but you do have one that comes in, and they're both on the medial side, and this is called the hilum right here. This is where all of this kind of comes in to bring the blood in, take the blood out, and then get the waste out. So you have a renal artery. It's the one that enters into the kidney. So the renal artery brings the blood in. The renal vein exits the kidney with the filtered blood back into the system. And then you have the ureter that we saw on the anatomage table that leaves with the waste down into the urinary bladder where it's stored until it needs to be removed from the body. What you would be able to see if we could see structures in here really well, and I don't see that we can, but you would notice that the renal artery has a thicker wall. And so that's an easy way to tell the difference between the artery and the vein. And it has a thicker wall because it contains lots of smooth muscle to move that blood. The renal vein has a thinner wall. It's a little flimsier, but again, you can't really see too well on this preserved specimen. Okay. The renal artery, remember, it delivers unfiltered blood and waste with waste and other byproducts and excess water into this kidney. So remember, the kidney is filtering that blood as it comes in. That renal artery brings it in. It goes through the filtration process, and then you have what we call filtration, then reabsorption of what we actually need, and then secretion into the bladder of the stuff that we don't need. So some of that metabolic waste. The renal vein transports the filtered and purified blood out of the kidney. So this is really blood in, blood out, and then waste goes out of the ureter. Okay, so I'm going to make a frontal, or what we call a coronal cut of the kidney so that we can view all of the internal structure. So I'm going to cut across here. I'm going to be careful not to cut my fingers to see if I can. Make a good enough cut. And like I said, this is pretty dense. I'm gonna have to make a couple passes at it. See, I already have a cut there. So I can get it to come around. Now don't be afraid to get in there and kind of open this up a little bit so that I can get a deeper cut. There we go. I made it through. Make sure I don't ruin this. Take my time here. There we go. You can start to see some of those structures down in there as I make the cuts. So I'm just going to use some pressure here. There we go. A little bit easier. Really sharp scalpel helps. Now remember, these have been in a bag for a while, so sometimes the structures are a little difficult to see. But that seems to be pretty good there. Okay. So what you'll see is, again, this is the medial aspect here. Okay, here's the medial aspect, so I just want to orientate you with that. Okay, so in comes the blood. Okay, and the blood here is what we call the renal capsule. It's this outside portion here. So this is my renal capsule, and then you'll see kind of two different colors in here. Let me see if I can grab something to use as a pointer here. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see kind of a lighter color. Okay, and this lighter color that you can see here, see how it gets a little darker here? In between that renal capsule, right here is the cortex. This is the renal cortex. You can see it's more dense than this medial portion here. There's a lot going on in this medial portion of the kidney. This part is highly vascular, which means it has lots of blood flow, and the color of the kidney shows just how vascular it is. You notice that in the cow kidney. Let me move some of that out of the way. Now remember, the kidney's job is to filter impurities out of the blood. So again, lots and lots and lots of blood. There are roughly 1 million nephrons in each kidney. And as we discussed before in the assignment, both kidneys filter about 125 milliliters of blood per minute.
so for a total of about 180 liters per day. So the renal medulla is this middle portion here. Sorry, let's go back to that renal cortex. That is, again, this area here. So from about here to about here, that's my renal cortex. Here's my medulla here in the middle. And it's the middle portion of the kidney where you can find the renal pyramids. And those are called the renal pyramids because you can see they kind of look like little pyramids right in here, right? So you can see that there. And they have collecting ducts. And these collecting ducts at the end of those, if I can kind of open this up just a little bit. Let's see if we can see that. You can see there's some collecting ducts in here. That whatever needs to be secreted out is collected into there. Then it moves into what we call the minor calyces right here, where it moves into what we call the major calyces here, where it all kind of comes together. And the tips of the pyramids where those collecting ducts actually empty the urine and will eventually move into the renal pelvis and move out into the ureter. So the pelvis then transports the urine out here. If we had a better cut here, then we could see that it would empty out into that ureter. Okay, so let's review the pathway the blood enters the kidney. So it comes in here. It comes in this middle portion here. Again, you can't really see it, but it comes in here and it goes through the renal artery, which we're going to make red in the video, and branches out into multiple branches. So it goes lots and lots of different ways because it wants to use this entire kidney to filter. Through the renal columns, you'll see in between each of these pyramids is what we call a renal column. And so it goes through this renal column to the renal cortex where they branch out even more so that the nephron can process the blood. So a lot of that processing begins in this renal cortex area. Filtration happens in that nephron, and you guys are going to get an opportunity to explain how the nephron works with filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. And it filters out all of that blood. It reabsorbs what we need, the substances the body wants to keep, things like sodium, potassium, calcium, water, etc. Anything that's excess is secreted, so we secrete the excess substances, which we talked about, ammonia that's been processed in the liver and becomes urea, and it's transported into these collecting ducts and then again into these minor calyces where they're going to be eliminated from the kidney and then out of the kidney through here in this area, in this medial area, out through that ureter. Collecting ducts travel through the renal medulla. So here's my collecting ducts through this medulla into these renal pyramids here and collected into the minor and major calyces. Then urine travels to the renal pelvis, which is this area in here. It's my renal pelvis. Kind of hard to see again because it's not really that fresh. And the urine then travels to renal pelvis and out the urethra, or the urethra eventually out of the urinary bladder where it was stored. So it leaves this artery, it leaves this kidney through the ureter to the bladder and then out of the body through the urethra. Okay. This has been a tour of the kidney. Again, you saw the beef kidney. This is the kidney, and this is how it processes. Now that you understand the major structures and what they do, you can start looking at how the nephron performs its job in this kidney.